Andy Cohen congratulated Erika Jayne for being in an Oscar-winning film, or having her song Drip in an Oscar-winning film. And she said, oh, I'm just a feature, but yeah, it's won this award. Like, girl, why could you have not used that moment to give me my flowers? Like, I put you on that song, on an album, which
Recently, there's been this like whole situation between the singer, Brooke Candy, and Erika Jayne. And it all kind of stems back to this song, Drip.
Okay, Drip.
Which, Brooke Candy's song.
Gotcha.
But Erika Jayne is featured on it.
Okay.
And it seems that at like the recent taping of the RHOBH reunion, Andy Cohen like congratulated Erika on the song. The way that Erika like responded to that congratulations kind of what set everything off.
Right.
Didn't really acknowledge Brooke Candy. Brooke Candy went on TikTok to kind of like share her feelings about this whole thing.
Sure.
You know, explaining that she was the one who put Erika on the track.
Okay.
That it's actually from her album Sexorcism, and that, you know, she has other features from like big artists on this album as well.
Okay. Yeah, so she's worked with a lot of people.
Right. And so to her, it felt like this was very much like Erika's moment, kind of like overlooking the fact that this was actually,
right,
you know, originated from Brooke Candy.
Interesting. So she's kind of taking ownership of this song that she was just featured on.
Yeah. And it didn't stop there. So Candy also brought up the fact that Erika hosted a private screening of the movie Anora in L.A.
Okay.
And didn't invite her. And, you know, Candy felt like this is another way of Erika kind of using this moment to promote herself.
I see.
Mentioned that she was like signing autographs and taking pictures.
So kind of basking in the success and kind of leaving Brooke out of it.
Yeah. And to add insult to injury, the day after the screening, Erika makes this Instagram post thanking the venue, her fans, the movie, for using her song Drip.
So no mention of Brooke Candy?
No mention, no tag, nothing.
Okay, so at this point, it's kind of like, wow.
Right, like 3 strikes, you're out.
It feels deliberate at this point, right?
Right, and that's exactly how Brooke Candy felt.
Understandably.
She called Erika's actions insane and said that this shows that she's not an artist. She reiterated that Drip is on her album. Erika's contribution was a small feature. And she even made it a point to say that Jesse St. John wrote the song.
Oh, yeah. So Erika didn't even write it.
Right. So it's like she's really trying to take credit where credit isn't really due. Now, after all of this public back and forth, so Candy revealed that she actually reached out to Erika privately at first. She sent her a message requesting a tag and, you know, just acknowledgement of like, hey, we collaborated on this.
Sure. Just to recognize that she exists.
Exactly.
Right.
And to kind of prove her point, Candy shared a screenshot of the text exchange. And you see her message to Erika, and then Erika's reply was just one word.
What was it?
Done.
Done. Oh, wow.
And so for Candy, that was like the confirmation that
Yeah.
everything Erika did was absolutely insane and wrong. And so basically Candy ended her whole commentary by saying that she would have much rather collaborated with Countess Luan.
Oh, my God.
Instead.
So she's like, I'd rather work with a different housewife.
Right, exactly.
Oh, my God. Talk about a messy collaboration. Beverly Hills attorney Adam Michael Sachs, he pointed out that Teresa and Liens, well, they reportedly didn't have a prenuptial agreement. And Sachs went on to say that without that legal protection, if they were to get divorced, you know, they'd essentially be treated as equal financial partners, meaning any debt they've racked up during their marriage, those tax liens would be split right down the middle. So when you consider the potential for divorce in a situation with this much debt, what are your thoughts on that missing prenup?
Well, it definitely highlights the vulnerability they're both facing. As Sachs put it, being 50-50 partners financially without having that clear agreement beforehand, it can really backfire, especially when you're dealing with this amount of debt. It makes you wonder why they decided not to have that safeguard in place, especially considering Teresa's, well, you know, her past financial issues.
And this is where Marilyn Chenitz comes in. She's a matrimonial and family law expert, and she reminds us of something crucial, Teresa's past tax conviction. Chenitz really emphasizes that with these kinds of cases, repeat offenses are taken incredibly seriously. And even though these new lien-ins are mainly in Louis's name because they're married and likely filed their taxes jointly, Teresa could still be held responsible. You know, as Chenitz said, the IRS doesn't really care who is at fault. They just want to collect the money. So help us understand, how do joint tax filings impact individual liability in a marriage?
Right. So when you file your taxes jointly, you're basically telling the government that you're both equally responsible for that debt. Even if the income that generated the tax liability was mostly Luis's, Teresa, by signing that joint return, has agreed to share that burden. It's a big risk, and a lot of people don't fully grasp the implications.
And Chinitz was pretty blunt. She warned that Teresa could be in seriously hot water and could even face prison time if this latest tax lien is seen as a new offense and a repeat of her past behavior. It's a sobering reminder of the potential consequences here.
Yeah, no kidding. The legal system doesn't tend to go easy on repeat offenders when it comes to financial crimes. And, Teresa's prior conviction, that's definitely going to be a factor in how the authorities approach these new leases. And it's a really precarious situation for her with potentially some very serious outcomes.
And just to make things even more complicated, there are reports that Luis has asked for an extension on a $1 million loan. He's also looking for an additional $250,000, with the total now due by March of next year. So it seems like these tax liens are just one piece of a larger, maybe even more troubling financial puzzle. What does this loan extension request tell you?
Well, it could mean that they're having some cash flow problems right now. If they need to extend a big loan like that and ask for even more money on top of it, it kind of suggests that their current income or assets aren't enough to cover their debts.
Yeah.
This definitely adds another layer of complexity to their whole financial situation.
Okay, let's shift gears for a moment and head from the drama in New Jersey to the Hamptons. Lindsay Hubbard from Summer House, there were rumors swirling around about a potential breakup between her and her boyfriend, Turner Kufay. But Lindsay came out and said, nope, we're still together and we're very much focused on raising our new baby. It sounds like she's in a very different place now.
It is good to hear that they're doing well, especially after that very public and, dramatic end to her last relationship. It seems like she's found some stability and she's really prioritizing her family right now.
Speaking of that past relationship, Lindsay recently bumped into her ex-fiancé, Carl Radke, at the Summer House premiere. She said their interaction was mostly about an inside joke they have going on about Carl's mail still being delivered to her apartment. So it sounds like maybe a slightly awkward but kind of lighthearted encounter, at least on the surface. But things took a more serious turn when Lindsay talked about Carl's hot mic moment about, the timing of her pregnancy announcement. Apparently, Carl suggested that Lindsay waited to announce it on purpose because she knew it would cause more drama, coming so soon after their breakup. Lindsay shot that down hard, though. She said she waited because, the risk of miscarriage is higher in the first trimester, and especially considering her past experiences, it was a really sensitive time. She called Carl's comment distasteful, fucked up, and inappropriate. When you hear her side of it, does Carl's comment seem out of line?
Absolutely. It's just, pregnancy announcements, they're deeply personal and often filled with anxiety, especially for someone who's experienced miscarriages before. To publicly question Lindsay's motivations like that, particularly given how sensitive this topic is, it does come off as incredibly insensitive and, as she said, inappropriate.
Yeah. Lindsay even said that she might never forgive Carl for calling off their wedding on camera. She called it the most traumatic thing she's been through as an adult. Now, looking ahead, Lindsay also talked about her thoughts on marriage, with Turner. She's definitely being more cautious this time around. She really wants to make sure they're truly compatible before jumping into marriage again.
She's had a very public and painful relationship end, so it makes perfect sense that she'd be more thoughtful and deliberate about making that kind of commitment again. And having a child together also changes things. It shifts the priorities and the we of that decision.
Absolutely. And on the topic of their daughter, Gemma, Lindsay touched on the possibility of her appearing on Summer House. She mentioned that it's tricky because she wants to share her life on the show, but she also needs to protect Gemma's privacy, especially since her dad isn't in the public eye. Okay, let's head back to New Jersey now, but this time we're going back in time a bit.
Yeah.
Gia Giudice, Teresa's daughter, and her boyfriend, Christian Carmichael, they actually talked about a past breakup on Gia's podcast, Casual Chaos, and Christian was right there with her. So Gia talked about how upset she was when Christian didn't say goodbye before she left for college. She took it as a sign that, maybe their connection wasn't as strong as she thought. Christian said he just didn't think anything of it, which, Gia clearly didn't buy at the time.
And it emphasizes how important it is to communicate clearly and to understand each other's emotional needs.
And things got even more complicated when Gia revealed that Christian was, seeing other people in the weeks before he came to visit her at college. Then Christian claimed that Gia was hooking up with people at school, too. Gia admitted that she kissed 2 guys during her first week and said she felt horrible about it. So it sounds like they were both kind of exploring their options as they adjusted to being long distance. That's a pretty common experience for college couples, wouldn't you say?
It definitely is.
What's interesting is that despite this rocky start, Christian later took Gia on a trip to Florida, which they considered their, well, first date all over again, and he officially asked her out again. So even after seeing other people, they decided to give their relationship another shot. But that second try didn't last forever. About a year and a half later, they broke up again. They both had their reasons. Gia mentioned her own immaturity and communication issues, and she said Christian was always hanging out with his friends and lacked, well, drive, since he didn't have a job until he was like 21 or 22. Gia even admitted that when Christian got 2 jobs after they split, it kind of annoyed her a little. It sounds like the breakup might have pushed him to grow up a bit. And there was this whole incident where they hooked up after breaking up, and Gia looked through Christian's texts. She found a text from the other woman mentioning Gia's approach at the bar, and she confronted Christian about it. It seems like there were still some unresolved feelings and maybe some blurred lines between them. It can be really hard to set those clear boundaries after a breakup, especially when you're still physically involved.
It can be so tough.
Gia and Christian actually got back together again 6 or 7 months later. They said things just didn't feel right with other people. Their relationship has definitely been a roller coaster. Okay, last but not least, let's check in on the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and hear what Tamra Judge had to say about Erika Jayne and Garcelle Beauvais. Dolores Catania chimed in too. So Tamra called out Erika for saying that Garcelle isn't interesting and for suggesting that Garcelle should share more of her dating life, especially since Erika doesn't really do that herself. Dolores agreed, calling it the kiss of death for a housewife, and pointing out that you don't need to have gone through some big trauma to have an interesting storyline. They both highlighted what they see as a world of double standards on the show. What do you think about this kind of commentary from housewives on other franchises?
I mean, it's pretty common in the Housewives universe. These women often have opinions about each other's shows, and they're not shy about sharing them. What Tamra and Dolores are doing is calling out what they see as hypocrisy. They're pointing out how the rules of what makes a housewife interesting seem to constantly change.
Right. And Tamra speculated about why Garcelle left RHOBH. She wondered if it was something she had planned all along, or if it was because of the heat she was getting. Dolores suggested that Garcelle had been warned about isolating herself by sticking mostly with Sutton, and that now she's kind of pushed everyone else away. Tamra even had a theory that Garcelle left when the show stopped being fun for her. These are some pretty interesting insider perspectives on the inner workings of these shows.
Definitely. Dolores' point about the importance of building alliances within the group, and how not doing that can backfire, that's something we see play out in a lot of these Housewives franchises. And the idea that the show needs to be enjoyable for the women to stay on it well, that speaks to the emotional toll it can take.